Let's go live, back in action, attacking those speakers from the field to the bleachers. This is the Power 32 podcast, baby. We are here. We are ready to rock and freaking roll. We got the smart ass Kenny Cope. I am Jason Freeman, the Sports Prophet, and as you are seeing on your screen right now, Mr. Primetime 313, Mr. David Dale is going to be with us all off season, all year long, for the rest of our lives, rocking and rolling, part of the family. Power 32, and we'll be in the intro next week when we figure out this technical shit. So, David, First of all, what's up, man? How you doing today?
I am doing awesome, man. I'm sitting here, man, and I'm just kind of basking in the glow and kind of, looking forward to doing some big things here on the Power 32. And everybody out there that's watching or whatever so far, make sure you hit that subscribe and the like and follow us and all that other good stuff.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to expand the social media. We're gonna turn this into something huge. And but yeah, I'm really excited. I'm humbled. I'm grateful. That you guys give me the opportunity to do this, and really looking forward to doing some big things with the Power 32.
Well, Kenny, I'm sure I speak for both of us when I say we're very happy to have him aboard. There's no doubt about it. It brings a lot of knowledge to the show, so it's going to be a lot of fun going forward and new segments coming through. It's going to be the off season, but we'll try to keep it hot for him, Kenny, right?
Yes, sir.
There's always things going on. Damn, the scouting combine is next week. We got free agency coming up, and that's what we're going to focus on today is free agency and other guys who are requesting trades and want to move and this and that and figure out what teams are the best for them. But to go along with that is like the salary cap, which is huge. So before going over each player that we want to, check out and see what may be the best landing spot for them, just real quickly, I'll give you the top few teams. New England has the most salary cap space. I'm not going to go over numbers and bore everybody to death, but New England has plenty of space. So does Vegas, Washington, the Chargers. The next fifth is Chicago. These are by the numbers I'm looking at by cap space. And then Arizona, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, and Detroit, believe it or not, to close out the top 10. And then it gets a little bit more shadier toward the bottom over there, right, Kenny? It's, not as much wiggle room for, teams that have been doing well and been in the playoffs for the last couple of years.
Right. That's how it's set up, right? For you to be able to improve your team through the draft. But sometimes you can let go of players. You can restructure contracts. You can give yourself more money for the upcoming year. And the salary cap went up, I think, $22 million, something like that. So
right. 26 mil, 26 and a half. Yeah.
So I know teams are, looking to cut corners everywhere so that they can add that last guy that can maybe take them to the last game and seal it up.
Well, and you know what, David, there's also a reason why those teams I mentioned, New England, Vegas, well, not Washington so much, they're a little fabrication, those Chicago, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, these are teams that have not been doing well. So there's a reason why they got a lot of cap space. They haven't been going after the good players, and maybe this offseason, as we name some players, they will. But you got to spend the money, just like we talk about in Dallas. If you want to win, you got to spend the money, and you can't be Jerry Jones land. So fork up the dough.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think you look at New England, I think they're 125 million or 120 million, something like that under the cap. So I think when you start looking at numbers like that, New England's got a big opportunity to kind of really get a stranglehold on this off season as far as free agents. It's just a matter of guys want to go there and play. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. And then you get teams like New Orleans that are negative. They're a sucky team, and there's really nothing they can do about it at the moment because they just don't have the money to spend.
That's the thing. You have to have the money to spend, and you know what New England does. And when you have a team, Kenny, like New England, who has got a quarterback, as you say hello to David McNiner over here, a quarterback who is under a rookie contract, you're going to have that wiggle room to spend that money. So watch out for New England with the new head coach, Mike Vrabel. in there right now, which brings me to the question that Kenny had brought up off air when we were talking for a little bit, which is actually so rare. It's amazing. Not that we rehearsed or anything, but the question was brought up real quick, and I don't really know what your answer is. The best head coaching move of the offseason. So we got Kellen Moore to the Saints, which I can tell you right now is my least favorite right off the bat. The Cowboys go with Schottenheimer, Vrabel, like I said, to the Pats, Pete Carroll to the Raiders. Then you got Aaron Glenn to the Jets, Ben Johnson to the Bears, and the Jaguars get Liam Cohen in a weird way from Tampa Bay. Let me just say real quick before I hear you guys answer. Pete Carroll, I like him being hired. I just think he got hired in the wrong spot because Vegas is going nowhere. He's not going to turn them around and be there long enough to be a Super Bowl champion. I thought that he would have been better fit in a place like Dallas, where they do have at least some structure involved. I thought it would have worked out there better, David. That's my opinion. But going with that, and who else you think may have been maybe the best head coach acquired this offseason?
I think with obvious, you go with the obvious choice. Actually, there's two obvious choices. I think Mike Vrabel going to the Patriots. I think that was kind of what they wanted all along. Yeah. We talked about it the last time I was on. They kind of did, Gerard Mayo a little dirty. But I think in the back of their minds, Robert Kraft and company, I think Mike Vrabel, once he left Tennessee, I think they were just biding time to get their hands on Mike Vrabel. Like we say, with all the money they have, they could potentially turn New England back into a place where people want to go. And then, of course, Ben Johnson, that was the kind of the hot hire right. during this last coaching cycle. And I think when you look at the weapons that the Bears have, I'm still not sold on Ryan Poles long-term as far as being the GM. Kind of question some of the decisions that he makes, but I think hiring Ben Johnson may have bought him a couple more years. And we'll see. It's going to be real. I think Chicago is going to be a dangerous team. You see what Ben Johnson was able to do with Jared Goff. And now he's got Caleb Williams. He's got all those weapons. I'm still a little bit questionable, the running backs. At the running back position, but we'll get into that when we start talking about free agents. But probably Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel are probably the two that I was most excited about. And then, like I say, Liam Cohen and the way that whole thing turned out with Jacksonville, just one weird storyline after another. Not sold on that, and I'm not sold, like you said, on Kellen Moore either.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah, great answers right there. Kenny, do you agree with either one of his choices, or you got somebody else in mind?
This is perfect. My favorite one, I know it's not popular, Liam Cohen. Who did I go off about all year? Who did I go off about all year last year? Bucky Irving. And on other shows, I was like, is anybody seeing the offense in Tampa? Do you see how he's scheming these guys up? Are you seeing these crazy run plays that they're giving Bucky Irving? They're making everybody look so good. Who was it? Liam Cohen. Problem is I don't know about his supporting cast that he's going to have down there. And you got the Jags, who are a team that's bottom of the barrel defensively, just like New Orleans, New England, Tennessee. All these teams that we're looking for new coaches are at the bottom on defense. And so most of them got defensive coaches. Some got offensive coaches. The Jets, I think, were the only team that weren't in the bottom half of the worst defenses that are being ranked for 2025. And so Liam Cohen's there to make that team, put up some points. And what do they got over there? They got ATN still, or is he being moved? I know they got Tank Bigsby. Right?
Yeah, they got them both right now, as far as I
Trevor
know.
Lawrence.
They try to trade one, it's possible. But I like that answer. It's interesting because the Jaguars wanted him very badly, and there must be a reason why. And that offense really clicked. Not just Bucky Irving, but Baker Mayfield. Yeah. Baker Mayfield had a complete revival in Tampa Bay, and now he's looked at as a Pro Bowl type quarterback. I think it's funny how we're all going to give different answers. I like Aaron Glenn to the Jets, and it's not to say that he's going to turn them around this year and make them a Super Bowl contender, because we don't even know what their fucking quarterback is going to be. But I think that he's going to bring that tough, rough, gritty type of attitude to the Jets. That's what they need, because they got a lot of talent. They just need that mentality to go with it. So I think he will bring that to the team. It's not just his mentality. He's also X's and O's type of guy. Aaron Glenn knows this game very, very well. He played for this team back in the 90s. So I think that's going to be a really good match. And that's really cool that we all get different answers for that when there's so many different possibilities. And Ben Johnson, I think, is definitely one that is the most interesting, David, when you bring that up, because we know about his style, his skill, his X's and O's, but is he going to be a leader of men? And that's yet to be seen.
And I think when you start looking, every coaching cycle has the hot guy. Whether it's, you go back a few years, it's Ken Whisenhunt. Everybody wanted him. And, you look at guys like, Eric Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich and all these guys. My thing has always been these guys get built up. They go and they take these head coaching jobs. They get a little bit over their head, and within 3 years, they're back being a coordinator on a crappy team. And I'm rooting for Aaron Glenn, but I don't really see anything other than the mentality. I don't really see them being too successful over the next couple of years. He may be one of those guys that's maybe 2 or 3 and out, even though he is a native son, so to speak, by playing for them in the past. But I still don't think they're going to give him a very long leash to turn this thing around. You did mention the quarterback situation, and I know Garrett Wilson, their top wide receiver, was being talked about the last couple of weeks about maybe being moved. But Ben Johnson, I think he's got the best chance of any of these coaches during this last cycle to succeed, just because he's got a really, really good defense. He's got really good players on offense. If they could shore up a couple things on their offensive line, Ronnie Stanley is probably one of the guys we'll be talking about in free agency. If they can stabilize their offensive line and give Caleb Williams a fighting chance, I think that will probably prove to be the most successful hire during this last hiring cycle.
Yeah, tough division. That's the thing. There's no doubt about it. I mean, so we'll see. And, the Bears do have money to spend, so let's see if they do. Keenan Allen is a guy who may depart that team. Let's see if they do keep him. But there's guys to go through. And real quick, Kenny, going to you, our guy Debo over here, apparently seeking permission to go find a trade. And you and I had spoke about this a little bit, and we have debated back and forth. And I don't know how crazy we're going to get, right now. But as we look at Steve in the chat over here, my media said Rodgers begged for a job. I love it. So just going back to Debo real quick, if I am all right if he gets traded, I feel like his best days are behind him, and he's not a guy that's going to run the route tree. I'm all right if we're able to get something good for him. Now, is that a second-round pick? Is that enough? I don't really know, but there's talk of, what about Debo and the 49ers' 11th overall pick for Myles Garrett? I would do that in a heartbeat. You may not want to do that with Myles Garrett being 30 years old and in the league 8 years, but to me, he's still, top 3 defensive end in the league.
Absolutely. Well, real quick, Debo, we know why he was here. He was here to help out Jimmy G. He couldn't throw the ball, so they had to dink and dunk their way to the Super Bowl, and he carried us that year. And he had a great year in 2019. I don't forget that, but I also know that he's an every other year guy. He doesn't give you like 3 years in a row of numbers. He's like a good guy. Then he gets hurt, plays 10 to 8 games. Then he has a great season again. And then he's out for the next season. Then he plays a good season. So last year he had, the year before the last season, he had 10 touchdowns. I think just around 1,000 or around between 1,000, maybe even up to 1,300 yards combined in the 2023 season. 2024, back to his average, which is about 750 to 900 yards and about 4 or 5 touchdowns. That's where he landed, and that's what you're going to get as an average. But Debo can always give you that big season. The problem is that we don't really use that kind of guy here anymore. We need people who can run the route tree, like you said, cuts, make good moves, juke out some cornerbacks, and get open, and getting separation, which Debo's not been able to do. I'm a loyal guy, so I love Debo, but I recognize he's the guy that's got to go, especially when you look at everyone who's been signed already.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Yeah, we're going to talk more 49ers as we get into it because Brock Purdy's going to come up, David. Debo, we can talk all day about that, but, we have so many other guys we want to get to. I want to get to a guy that everybody's talking about, and that's Aaron Rodgers and where he's going to play because, speaking of Aaron Glenn, he gave him the boot in New York. He's like, I'm sorry, you're out of here. That's it. We're starting with the new regime. So who even wants him right now? There is a scenario out there, and now I'll mix this in, David. I'll go to you first, where Matthew Stafford, especially his wife, is not very happy, and she's expressing her feelings where there's a possibility he gets traded because I think it's his brother-in-law who's the QB coach over with the New York Giants. Now, if that happens, that opens up the door for maybe Aaron Rodgers to slide into Los Angeles, which would be absolutely amazing all in itself. Now, personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Matthew Stafford stays where he is and they work something out. But Aaron Rodgers, is there a need for him? To me, everybody keeps saying Pittsburgh, David, but I don't see how he's going to help them when they have no wide receivers except for George Pickens, and you need him to be healthy. I don't get it.
You've known me for a while. You know I'm not an Aaron Rodgers fan at all. Just as far as the guy, you can't argue with what he can do with the football. But as far as a guy and a teammate, that's not a guy that I would want anywhere close, especially this late in his career. We saw what he did the last 2 years with the Jets. I mean, you take away the first year because he got hurt. He comes in last season. Just everything from the missed practices to the unscheduled vacations to just being a bad teammate. He comes in, he kicks and pouts, he gets the guys that he wants, the offensive coordinator, he gets the receivers that he wants, he gets everything that he wants. And then we look back 2 years later, and now here he is being available again. So the question becomes, what team is he going to ruin next? And if we're talking about ruining, or a team, the Raiders are already a ready-made ruined team. So if he wants to go to where the expectations aren't that high, and he just wants to play out a couple more years and get some paychecks, then you go to the Raiders. If he's serious about winning, I would be very interested, just from a dynamic standpoint, be very interested to see how he did do in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, who's a no-nonsense kind of guy, who's not going to bow at the feet of Aaron Rodgers. That would be kind of an interesting dynamic to see. But realistically, I would probably say, like you mentioned with the Matthew Stafford thing, there's a possibility, by the way, that Matthew Stafford could end up in Minnesota to take the place of Sam Darnold. That would just make Jared Goff instantly the fourth best quarterback in that division. But there's no way that I wouldn't want Aaron Rodgers. If I'm a team that is like a younger team, that is just a couple of players away, even if it is the almighty, the great Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if I want that guy any near my team if we're up and coming. And, I take my chances on a free agent quarterback or maybe even drafting somebody before I give the keys to my castle to Aaron Rodgers. Just at this stage in his career, I just don't think he gives a shit anymore. That's just my opinion.
Kenny, for Aaron Rodgers to go somewhere, it would have to be a ready-made team, so to speak, that's a quarterback away. I don't really know if that exists out there right now, except for LA, the Rams being a possibility if that scenario were to break itself out. Is there a team that you think he could go to right now that he would help out? Or because him going to Tennessee doesn't make any sense.
No.
I honestly don't think a ready team would want him because of what David said. I agree with him. And if you know me, I don't like Aaron Rodgers either. Never did. He's been declining. He's old as hell. He's not Tom Brady, which he thinks he could have been. He got up one morning and was like, you know what? I can do that. And and not everyone can do that. And so it's not going to happen. First of all, the mistake was going somewhere like to New York because the stadium is a disaster. It's where the most people get hurt at Met Stadium. And so I don't see Stafford going to the Giants, and I don't see Rodgers going to the Giants either. I would see Rodgers maybe going, like you said with Stafford, to Minnesota. I could see that working out. Or Rodgers needs to go somewhere where they're rebuilding, where it doesn't matter. Like they just need a quarterback.
I have a real sneaky one for you. I got a sneaky team for you, and I'm not saying that he would turn this team around, but the New Orleans Saints.
That's what I was thinking too. They got nothing to lose.
And more
Rodgers in the Dome. He would love to be playing in the Dome full time. Getting at least 8 games a year, more than that, obviously, when you consider the other teams that are playing in that division and throughout the conference. That could be one. That could be a sneaky one in there that comes around. But let's see what he does and how he wants to go out because, all in all, we're not going to get into it now. He wasn't horrible last year. He really, really wasn't.
When he wants to be good, he can.
Yeah. When his head is in it. When his head is in the game.
Motivated.
And I think Kellen Moore.
Know this, but Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers have a current record that they're padding. They have like the most touchdowns, like quarterback to receiver right now, something like that. And so he loved that. At the end of the year, they were going nuts. They were only playing together, and maybe he was looking a little bit at Lazard every once in a while. But you know how he is, like David said. He's got his favorites. He's like a guy like that, and he has to be properly motivated. So I say he goes to it. Like I actually think he even looks good in the New Orleans uniform, which I like to picture the quarterback in the uniform. I could see that, and I can also see the Stafford in Minnesota.
Yeah, and I think in Kellen Moore's offense, I think Kellen Moore's offense is kind of suited for what Aaron Rodgers does. It's not Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore wants to get back to being a very pass happy kind of coach like he was, early on in his coordinating career. He kind of ran into it a little bit with the running game, not as consistent, but I think Mike McCarthy was kind of forcing him to do some things offensively or that he didn't want to do. Oh no, I'm sorry. He was with Philly just last year. He had the luxury of having Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. So, but I think he would love to be able to get back to being more pass happy. And Aaron Rodgers is a guy that can do it. You got some decent receivers down there. They're not world beaters by any stretch, but as we get into the free agents, there's probably 6 or 7 free agent wide receivers out there that could potentially land in New Orleans and maybe make Aaron Rodgers somewhat relevant again.
They have to be able to protect him too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, Kenny, you're right. You got to invest in the offensive line one way or the other. You really do. There's no doubt about it.
Because real quick, for example, Matthew Stafford, he's like one of the most sacked quarterbacks, and like right now, he's got he gets sacked all the time. So wherever Stafford goes, you better protect him. So
he holds the ball for a long time, Matthew Stafford. He's been able to do that. There's no doubt about it. And as far as the quarterback market goes, and we're going to get to another quarterback right now. We got a couple to get to, and we'll breeze through it, a little quicker than Aaron Rodgers. But teams that need quarterbacks, in my opinion, for sure, the Jets, the Browns, because Watson, we just don't know. The Steelers right now, they have a decision to make. And let me stop right there for a second and ask you guys what you think the best decision is. Is it Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, or in my opinion, go with the kid Justin Fields, let him develop in that offense, get him some help, for God's sake. Get him help, protect him, do what you do best in Steelers, and that's, smash mouth type of football, and let Fields get his. He doesn't have to put up the crazy numbers. He's shown that he can win. He was 4-2 last year with them, and it's not like Russell Wilson did a whole lot better. So,
right.
Kenny, real quick, you, if out of the three, just pick one: Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, or Justin Fields.
Well, right off the bat, I don't think any of them takes you to the Super Bowl. But I stick with Justin Wilson. He's been there. He knows the players.
Wait, who? Justin Fields or Russell Wilson?
That's a combination. He went to the lab and built a Justin Wilson.
I merged them together.
Right. Yeah. Fusion.
Football dyslexia.
We call him Bustin' Fails. But if you're asking me of the three, I'm going to go with Justin Fields, because they could have lost those 4 games with Justin Fields. They didn't have to bring Russell Wilson in to lose those 4 games in a row at the end of the season. We already knew the second half of their schedule was going to be tougher, but I don't think that had anything to do with it. I don't like Russell almost as much as I don't like Aaron, but Russell was a good quarterback. He could still air that ball out, and he's someone who is motivated. I feel like he wants to do well wherever he goes, and so he has a good work ethic, I think. And that's a guy who maybe should go somewhere. I've heard, I know this is crazy, I don't know if you guys, the sporting news, I don't really quantify or qualify as like a legit place to get your news, but they brought up Russell Wilson coming to the Niners. Have you guys heard this?
I have not.
Have you heard anything about that?
Jason would love that. Jason would love Russell Wilson but I don't. Yeah. The problem with Pittsburgh is that they don't develop quarterbacks. They don't spend enough time focusing on their offense. They put all this heart and soul and effort into their defense, and they don't really do anything with their offense. You luck up with Antonio Brown, you luck up with Schuster, you luck up with Pickens. They all turn into dumpster fires. Pittsburgh needs to sit down. Mike Tomlin needs to sit down and say, hey, we need to figure out what we can do to make our offense better, because as we've seen the last few years, the way these offenses are progressing in the NFL, especially in the AFC, Pittsburgh needs to be a little bit more dynamic. You're in a division with the Ravens, who can put up points, and the Bengals, who can put up points. You can't keep going through life winning these games 17-10 and having your kicker go out and kick 27 field goals a game. You can't do it. So to me, in order for any quarterback to work in Pittsburgh, especially a young quarterback like Fields, they have to change their entire philosophy when it comes to the way that they look at the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, you're not lying. Their kicker was
Pittsburgh
one of their best
has
players.
money to spend. They need to spend. Yeah, right, Boswell. Yeah, look, they have money to spend this year. They're there in the salary cap, 50 million. They have money to spend. They should go out and spend it on offensive line and wide receiver, in my opinion. Give Justin Fields a shot. Let's see what happens. We're hearing what do you got? McNiner saying Russell Wilson to the Raiders, reunite with Pete Carroll over there. That is a possibility. To finish,
I don't think Pete Carroll wants anything to do with Russell Wilson. The way that ended, it ended bad in Seattle.
And they're rebuilding there.
I heard. Yeah, we'll see what they do with quarterback. Let's see if they draft one. I keep seeing Shedeur Sanders in mock drafts falling to the Raiders. If he goes in at 6, we'll see if that happens. But we said the
Jason,
Jets.
You mentioned Tennessee. You don't think Tennessee needs a quarterback?
No, I was just about to mention them. I was going to say we have the Jets, Browns, Steelers, Titans, Raiders, Giants, Saints, and then questionable is the Seahawks. I mean, they got Geno Smith, but if they're going to take the next step, I think they need to look in another direction.
You think they'll draft somebody then?
I do.
I
think that they draft Jackson Dart.
And that's, Jackson Dart, there's actually people that are saying that now he's like the second or third best quarterback prospect in the draft.
Right.
I almost wouldn't mind Russell Wilson going to the Giants for a year or two. The problem with the Giants is that they're another team that right now has no identity. Their defense is okay, but they're not great. They have a couple of weapons on offense, but that Daniel Jones contract really hamstrung them and set them back a couple of years. But the thing, if you do take a Russell Wilson, he's going to take a veteran-friendly deal. It's not going to cost you a lot to get him. And that's the key with Russell Wilson. No matter where he goes, it's not going to cost you a lot to get him. So now it's just a matter of Russell Wilson kind of deciding, look, he still thinks he's going to end up being with the Steelers. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think, like you guys said, the Steelers are going to go with Fields and call it a day. But I do think a soft landing spot for Russell Wilson could be the Giants. And I wouldn't be totally upset at that. I'm not a huge Russell Wilson fan, but geez, for the love of God, give us some stability, at MetLife. And I think Russell Wilson and Brian Daboll, who knows? I'm not crazy about the dynamic between the two, but who knows? If Brian Daboll can coax another year or two, maybe have a couple of Seattle flashbacks with Russell Wilson, maybe, just maybe, we can win more than 3 or 4 freaking games. Tired of losing.
It's a good idea. I like the moves that you guys have made. To be honest with you, David, I like what the Giants. I love Theo Johnson. I thought that was a good pick. Drew Phillips. You got the Malik Neighbor. I like what's happening over there. Keep building that team up. You guys will be good to go.
Yeah. They got to build up that offensive line. That's, again, very important. But you got to get the quarterback to do it. And Sam Darnold is probably going to be free, and or he is already, I should say. And I don't think Minnesota's going to re-sign him. If they do, I would be shocked, to be honest with you, because I think they're ready to go with J.J. McCarthy, and that's it. Unless Matthew Stafford becomes available, maybe a different story like you mentioned before. But Sam Darnold, I can't think of many teams that he can go to where he's going to make them that much better. And I don't think that he would be a quarterback that can contend for a Super Bowl. I believe that last year was somewhat of a fabrication because of how good of a head coach Kevin O'Connell is. And if he goes to the
DC as well wasn't bad.
Yeah. Right. And if he goes to the Jets, which I think is a possibility, believe it or not, going back to New York, maybe going to the Giants, even going back to New York in some way, shape, or form, it's possible, but he's not going to be able to do anything. So in my opinion, if I was any team, I am not paying this guy more than $10 million to come in for 1 year and be a bridge quarterback.
No, and that's why he's actually hoping that Minnesota, because the one thing that he's got going for him right now with the Vikings is the uncertainty of the health of J.J. McCarthy right now, because, there's still no guarantee that J.J. McCarthy is going to be 100% by the time, the regular season rolls around. And if he is, how long is it going to take him to get into the groove? So Minnesota has a couple questions they got to ask themselves. One, if we do get rid of Sam Darnold and we're ready to give the reins over to J.J. McCarthy, are we ready to take a step back because of what's going to be a very, very tough division? And if we do franchise Sam Darnold, are we going to be able to catch that same lightning in the bottle that we did this past season? You're not going to win 14 games again, but I think if you go JJ McCarthy, I think you're probably looking at maybe a 9-10 win season. And I don't think in the NFC North, the way that division could potentially shape up and break down, I don't think 10 wins is going to be enough to get you in the playoff.
Great points.
Kenny, do you like Sam Darnold being a starting quarterback anywhere?
I never thought he was a starting quarterback. I don't know what happened last year. That was amazing. I would have never bet on something like that, but it worked out. You know, we had Jimmy G, took us to the Super Bowl. Obviously, he was not a great quarterback. So it can work on the right team. I just don't think it's going to work on any other team right now.
That's the
Sam
thing.
Darnold's going to want a lot of money. And you know what his thing is that he kind of chokes in the big one. And so, you know, is that what you want? But when you're in Minnesota, you really do have to sit down and think about this because you just had a guy who was up for MVP nomination, right? And now you're just going to go on to JJ McCarthy. And Minnesota's like, shit, we finally did it. We finally, you know, got really good, not just losing in the playoffs. Well, they lost in the playoffs as they usually do, but still better than ever. And so are the fans going to be ready to go back to that JJ McCarthy? And like David said, 9-10 wins in that division, you're probably not going to compete with JJ McCarthy, I don't think.
I think they need to move forward. I don't think that if JJ McCarthy starts this year that they're planning on winning the Super Bowl. You know, it's not going to be a Jaden Daniels sort of thing. So they're preparing more for the future. And I don't think Sam Darnold belongs in that. But we'll see where he goes. He's going to end up somewhere, whether it's a backup or a starter. We'll see, and we'll see how much money he gets. Now, there's a whole bunch of teams that need wide receivers, and I'm going to go through a few of them right now. But again, going through that salary cap, teams that need wide receivers who have money to spend is definitely New England, definitely Vegas, definitely Washington, because Terry McLaurin is currently the only wide receiver under contract for the Commanders, which is crazy. And you got the Chargers. They can definitely use a wide receiver. All they got really going on is Ladd McConkey, and he was a rookie last year, so not much going on over there. Chicago, they need wide receiver help. I know they got DJ Moore. I know they drafted Rome Odunze, but, you know, they can still use help there. Maybe not as much them. Arizona pairs somebody with Marvin Harrison Jr. Minnesota, they're pretty set in their wide receivers. Pittsburgh, they have the 8th most under the salary cap. So there are a lot of teams that need wide receivers, and here are some of the bigger names. T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen. When you hear these names, New England immediately pops up, Kenny. You got Drake May. Did I say that name right, Drake May? Did I get that
yes,
right? I don't know why it sounded weird in my head for a second. Get this kid weapons. Yes, you need to build from the inside out, but New England comes up immediately for me as a team that needs to get wide receivers. That's number 1. Vegas number 2, and Washington number 3. So you got T. Higgins, Godwin, Diggs, Keenan Allen, Cooper. You got wide receivers out there. These are the teams that should be going after them. And you know what? If you have to overpay because you need these guys.
Yeah, I think you also got DeAndre Hopkins on that list too. So if I'm New England and I'm a free agent wide receiver, Drake May kind of had a pretty decent last half of the season. Like, you know, we kind of talked about Bryce Young a little bit the last time I was on, about the second half of the season kind of being a little bit, okay, you know, we may be onto something here. So if you can get 2 out of those 6 or 7, you know, you can get maybe a Stephon Diggs and a DeAndre Hopkins. I don't see T. Higgins going. I think Keenan Allen probably ends up back in San Diego. I think he's kind of vocalized that the only 2 teams that he'd want to play for would be the Bears or the 49ers. So if the Bears don't re-sign him,
Prime time. I think a good fit prime time is really, I think the best fit is probably Chris Godwin, because he's a pro's pro. I mean, I know that he may be on the back a little bit, but you would probably want to get him and maybe draft a receiver like, you know, Jonte, if they can get him maybe, or something like that. I don't know. But, or who knows, maybe, what's his name from Colorado, the kid Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if I'm Chris Godwin, I stay in Tampa Bay. You know, if I'm him, you're not going to make the money that, you know, you think you're going to make out here in the free agent market. Because like you just said, Jay, he's kind of, you know, on the back half of his career. But if I'm Chris Godwin and I look at that division and I look at what we just did this past year and I look how Baker Mayfield kind of had a resurgence. That division is very winnable. You can get into the playoffs and you can make some noise. Tampa Bay is a dangerous team. If I'm Chris Godwin personally, I stay in Tampa Bay. I'll take 12, 13 million bucks, 15 million bucks, and I'm staying in Tampa Bay and see what we can keep doing with Bucky Irvin and Mike Evans, and maybe run it back one more time. That's just what I would do.
Yeah. Kenny, T. Higgins and Stephon Diggs, maybe the two best wide receivers on this list over here. Where do you like these guys falling?
I mean, I would love T. Higgins to come to the 49ers. We don't know what's going on with Brandon Ayuk. We're losing Deebo Samuel most likely. Ricky Pearsall was great in a few games last year, but we don't know what's going to happen when they're ready for him and focusing on him and preparing for him. I would love to see T. Higgins go there. I also could see T. Higgins going to, I know it's crazy, but someone like, he may not want to, but they're willing to pay a lot for it, is like the Jags. The Jags need a quality wide receiver for Trevor Lawrence, because when he was in college, I know he had a big guy as a wide receiver, and it's probably a lot of the reason why he was as good as he was. I don't think he's had that guy, and Christian Kirk is on his way out, I believe, and I think they're also sending out the tight end. I forgot it. Is it Graham?
Well, they may have found that guy. They may have found the guy in Brian Thomas Jr., who was up for actually rookie.
They most certainly did.
He's a hell of a wide receiver.
If they can get another guy, like for saying like McMillan, Tetoroa, I think that's how you say it, the guy in the draft, coming from Arizona, 6'5" guy like that. I mean, they could use him over there. I guarantee you that Liam Cohen would love to have him.
I like it.
To mix in. So I like that.
I think.
Well, plus Cohen's used to having big receivers too with Godwin and Evans.
And with
so that
Godwin,
you're right. That
is Godwin being like, is he being like made to go, or is he looking just testing the market? Do you know
he's a free agent. He's
a free agent. Okay. I think he ends up staying in Tampa, but I do. You made a good point.
I would take a pay
you
cut.
made a good point though, Kenny, with Liam Cohen and I could see that. And the Jags, hell, they called me last week and asked me if I wanted to play wide receiver for them. So
exactly.
I had to politely turn it down, but yeah, they need something. They need something down there, because people are starting to bail on Trevor Lawrence. People are really starting to bail on Trevor Lawrence and kind of, is he a bust or whatever? So I think they need something down there to kind of resurge him. T. Higgins to the Patriots. That's an interesting one, David McKnight.
That's a possibility, man. That's a possibility. I mean, they have
money. They got the money.
They need to do it.
They also going to need line. They just brought Eric Armstead over there, and they brought over Mike Morse on the offensive line to be the center. If they might want to also work on their offensive line to protect Lawrence a little better. Problem is, I've never liked Lawrence either, ever. He's been the prince of turnovers, in my opinion. Last year, he only had 8 interceptions. Do you want to know why? Because he only played 10 games. So when the man plays an entire season, he's up around 20 turnovers, and I'm not even counting missing, like dropping, fumbling and stuff like that. He's always had that problem. So protecting him may be one of the things they want to do this year in the draft, is pick somebody that can protect him. So
you got some decent free agent offensive linemen too, though. You got Dan Moore Jr., you got Zach Martin, you got Kevin Zeller, soon to be former Detroit Lion. You got Cam Robinson. You got Ronnie Staley potentially. So you got some guys out there that could, that they may be able. New England could buy themselves an offensive line just like that, and it probably wouldn't cost them more than 50, 60 million bucks. Even though the going rate for a really good offensive lineman is probably 24 to maybe 30 million bucks a year. But you can get all these guys on the cheap, piecemeal you a veteran offensive line, get you a couple receivers, and New England could be right back in it. They'd be the second best team in that division behind Buffalo, because the Miami thing is over. I think Tyreek Hill, real quick, is following the same path as Deebo. I think that, his best days are behind him. So there's a chance that the Dolphins move on and maybe Tyreek Hill becomes available.
He's cried about it a little bit, and then he's walked it back, Tyreek Hill, saying that he wants to be with the Dolphins. We'll see what he does want to do. But two teams that need wide receivers that we did not mention. We didn't mention Pittsburgh. Yes, they absolutely need wide receivers. And T. Higgins, they would love to have him and shove that right into space. But Buffalo as well. They would like to have a number one guy. Look, you got some good players. Don't get me wrong. I think that Amari Cooper is gone. So you got Keon Coleman, their rookie from this year, who's a good player. Khalil Shakir, who's an underrated player, no doubt, Dalton Kincaid. But I think you need that number one stud for Josh Allen, because I think that you saw at times in that Kansas City game, they struggled to find that guy that they needed to go to down the stretch. And they wanted it to be Dalton Kincaid, and it did not work out that way. So I think that they're in the market for one of these dudes right now. Franchise tags can be applied until March 4th. So, yeah, there is time for Cincinnati to franchise tag T. Higgins if they wanted to for a second year in a row. That's possible.
Hey, real quick, one more team that could use a wide receiver, and it's going to sound weird, is the Detroit Lions. You know, you got Tim Patrick, you got St. Brown, but I think the Detroit Lions could, because it kind of what you said with the Bills and Dalton Kincaid. When St. Brown and Sam Laporta weren't available, you know, they kind of, Jared Goff kind of struggled at times. You know, he was throwing it around a lot, but it would be kind of neat for the Lions to have that legit 1-2 punch at wide receiver and have somebody to come in to complement. I could see like an Amari Cooper, you know, going to the Detroit Lions. That would be awesome. But I do think Detroit's a sneaky team that when you look at who needs a wide receiver, you know, Detroit's not a name that comes up on the list, but I would, if I'm Brad Holmes, I'm looking.
I hear you, man. All right. Yeah, I mean, listen, wide receivers are very important in today's game. It's a passing game, but we could talk about a couple of running backs that are on the board, like Najee Harris, Nick Chubb, who gets hurt all the time, Aaron Jones, who's a little past his prime. But I look at teams who can use running backs like Dallas. New England pops up again. I think that Philly can use a backup to not beat up Saquon so much, give him a little bit of time, because Kenneth Gainwell, yeah, I mean, I like him. He's a good playmaker, but I
think
like
he's gone. I think he's going to leave, though, Kenneth Gainwell.
There you go. So even adding to the point, Tennessee, you know, maybe somebody to back up in Baltimore. I do like Justice Hill, but none of these guys really jump off to me. But Nick Chubb, Kenny Wood, but he gets hurt way too much. He reminds me of J.K. Dobbins in that way, where they have all this potential but can't stay healthy on the field.
As far as when you mentioned Dallas, the first person I think of is Gianti in the draft. If he can if he falls to Dallas, I think they swoop him up. If he can get past Chicago, and Kyle doesn't have a breakdown and lose his mind and take him, Dallas can have him. I think that would be a fantastic pick. But going an RB with your first pick, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Lions did it.
Would be great.
Yeah,
Lions did it with Gibbs,
and they surprised everybody. And look what it turned out to be. And I got to tell you, real quick, Mr. Primetime, you're going to love this one. Jahmyr Gibbs, early prediction, will have the most yards from scrimmage in the 2025 season collectively.
I absolutely. He's gonna have to now, because they'll probably, whatever, you know, the new coordinator, John Morton, will probably feature him a lot more even than what they did, you know, with Ben Johnson. Plus, I think you're going to start to see the phasing out a little bit of David Montgomery. And Gibbs is going to be the highlight. But we talked about Najee Harris. Here's a guy coming off a 4 straight 1,000-yard season. I think he's only going to probably cost you maybe $9 to $12 million a year. And I still think he may, in the right system, he still may have a few good years left, 2 to 3 good years left. So if Dallas is really looking for a running back, if they're really trying to make an impact, or any team really that's trying to fill that running back position, to me, I think Najee is probably the top running back in this free agent class. Like I said, I'm not a big Aaron Jones kind of guy. I think he caught lightning in a bottle in Minnesota. He benefited a lot from that offense. But Najee's probably the most consistent running back in this free agent class. 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's not going to cost you a whole hell of a lot, you know, relatively speaking. You're not going to have to break the bank to sign him. You could probably get him, like I say, $9, $10, $11 million a year. And for, you know, you sign him 2 years, $22 million, and you potentially have, you know, yourself some stability in your backfield for the next couple of years.
Backload that contract, and you got more money.
Give him loaded with incentives, and you know you're getting a pretty decent running. I think he wants out of Pittsburgh, but something tells me he's probably going to end up back in Pittsburgh if they want.
Najee is made for Pittsburgh, and I got to tell you, I think he's more of a complimentary back than anything. And you say he ran for over 1,000 yards in 4 straight seasons. You're absolutely correct. But you know what? If you do the math, that's only rushing for 60 yards a game. So, I mean, he didn't have a lot of games where he went for over 100 yards. I rarely ever saw him break a run for more than 10 to 12 yards. He does not have that breakthrough speed. So I like him more as a complimentary back. Is Jalen Warren that complimentary back? Well, you know what? If they had better weapons at wide receiver and maybe a better quarterback, then, yeah, maybe things would work out. But they just cannot get over that hump, and I feel bad for Tomlin in that way. But, yeah, running backs not really a hot thing right now. But Dallas, they need to address that. Maybe they do in the draft. We'll see. A couple of linebackers that are pretty good that we're going to see, and edge rushers that I want to combine. Let me throw them at you guys. Zach Bowen, who was just up for Defensive MVP of the Year. Khalil Mack is a sack machine. Nick Bolton from the Chiefs. I don't think they're going to let him go. They would be stupid if they did. Josh Sweat, who had a great Super Bowl and a great year, an edge rusher. And even Hassan Reddick. Dre Greenlaw we can put in there. So we have a lot of really good guys. And when I think about defense and teams that really need to start building it up, off the top of my head, your New York Giants right away. Detroit needs help at defense with all the injuries they sustained. The 49ers, Kenny, we need help. There's no doubt about it. New England. And you know what? Cincinnati. Go spend money on defense. You got to do it. Trey Hendrickson, yeah, you got to resign him, but you got to have other guys that can help out in that situation as well. So there's a lot of teams that need these guys. Again, Zach Bowen, Khalil Mack, Nick Bolton, Josh Sweat. Who has the most need to go ahead and beef up their defense off the top of your head, primetime?
I think you hit it right on the head. It's the Lions. The Giants need help on defense, but I think the Giants have so many other holes to fill that you could get Josh Sweat, Trey Hendrickson, and, insert other defensive player, Nick Bolton. And I still think that they struggle so much at other positions. So, but I think the team that would benefit the most right now from a major defensive player, I could see a Hassan Reddick or a Josh Sweat, with the Detroit Lions if they don't make a move for Myles Garrett. And by the way, if I'm Brad Holmes, you could have my one for the next 3 years. Give me Myles Garrett because your Super Bowl window is closing. You got a couple more good years left before Green Bay really takes off, before Chicago really takes off. Washington right now is going to be somebody that you got to deal with for the next few years.
Good one. I'm glad you mentioned Washington because that's a team that has a lot of money that really needs to beef up the defense in the secondary a lot, and we'll talk about that. But that's a good one right there.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man. But off the top of my head, it would be the Detroit Lions. They need defense in the worst way. New D coordinator coming in, maybe they'll play a little bit less man, so that your corners and secondary aren't as vulnerable as they were last year, putting these guys on an island. They have some questions as far as free agents and, Iffy and, they're going to re-sign him. They got some guys on defense, especially on the defensive line. Are they going to bring back? I know Zadarius Smith wants to stay with them. Marcus Davenport, they probably have given up on him already. But yeah, if I'm Brad Holmes, I'm gonna make the move for Myles Garrett, or I'm gonna look at the free agent market and probably try to grab me a couple of quality guys, not just fillers, but some quality guys that can make an impact.
You know what, Kenny? You know who else can use some help on defense? Two other teams in the AFC East, and that's Buffalo and Miami. Miami's losing their secondary guys. We'll talk about them in a little bit also, but they need pass rushers. And for Buffalo, as good as they were, they need better help on defense right now. They're getting a little bit older. All right. Some of the guys are going to be going, obviously. You don't know what you're going to get out of Von Miller, obviously. So I think if they can go after a Josh Sweat or maybe even a Khalil Mack, something like that, that would really benefit them in trying to take that next step because they got to get over the hump. And how are you going to do that? You got to acquire more talent if you're Buffalo.
I was thinking Myles Garrett to the Commanders or to Buffalo, actually. Okay. Those are the teams that I think that he would be interested in going to.
I like that.
You saw, Redskins are on the rise. They have the quarterback now. They have
Redskins. Yeah, go Redskins.
Did I say Redskins? I've always said Redskins. Sometimes I'll say skins, but always Redskins. Anyway, I don't think anybody really complained about that, but that's another show. Anyway, these good teams that want to compete, they want to get back to the Super Bowl. Even Minnesota, everybody who was there and wants to stay there, they better get on these free agents quick because, like I said, the bottom teams, New England, New Orleans, Jacksonville, Chicago, the Raiders, they all are going to come out with a lot of money, trying to give these guys a lot of money and tempting them to come there. So I know Myles Garrett wants a Super Bowl, so he's somebody who's special. So you can't just lure him away with a big paycheck because he's got a lot of money already, I'm sure. But there are a lot of good players out there that we just read off that there are teams desperate for, and they will give them a big payday. So you better move on these guys, the teams that are in competition and want to get back to the Super Bowl. Detroit, like you said, getting Myles Garrett to Detroit is disgusting. And you said it right. Give them all the picks. At this point, it doesn't matter because you got your team. You're not
F them picks.
F them picks.
F them picks. Because what you don't want is for Myles Garrett to say, to end up in Chicago or Philly. You don't want, especially you don't want him in Chicago, but you don't want him going to Philly. You don't want him going to the Commanders because these are teams you still got to fight with for the next couple of years. But by hook or by crook, man, Myles Garrett. But if you can't get him, Josh Sweat would be a good consolation prize. Trey Hendrickson would be a good consolation prize. Depending on what Cincinnati decides to do with him. The problem with Cincinnati is that by the time you got Chase, Burrow, potentially Higgins, and Hendrickson, that's probably 40% of your salary cap right there. So if you're Cincinnati, you got to kind of be careful.
Yep. That's right. Cincinnati's got a decision to make, and I think that they need to say bye-bye to T. Higgins and sign Jamar Chase to that money. As good as T. Higgins is, go find somebody else in the draft that you don't have to pay for 4 years because you got more to build around in that team. Cincinnati has got a quarterback that is capable of taking you all the way, but he cannot do it alone. What he needs more than anything, and it was displayed last year, is a fucking defense. The guy put up MVP numbers, and he would have been MVP. Like I had predicted in the beginning of the year, like I said. And again, if you don't have a defense to go with it, you're not going to win games. You can't consistently have to put up 35, 38, 42 points in order to win. You just can't do it. I don't care how good you are. I don't care if you got Joe Montana, Tom Brady, or Patrick Mahomes back there. It doesn't work.
On the team, you have to have both. The offense and the defense, you can't have one without the other. And so you have to pay attention to both. You have to grow both. You got to water both lawns. Can't forget one. And teams do that. We see it. They go all in on defense or they go all in on offense, and you see what happens. So
I think the Bengals would be it'd be really dumb on the Bengals' part. No offense to T. Higgins because he's an awesome wide receiver and he's going to be awesome wherever he goes, but they need to put their money elsewhere. There's no doubt. Like even at cornerback, where we're going to get to, DJ Reed is free. That's a guy they should go after from the New York Jets. He didn't get talked about because Sauce Gardner is over there. DJ Reed is just as good as him. I'm telling you right now. Excellent player. Asante Samuel Jr. is out there. Go get him. Unfortunately, Charvarius Ward and Hufanga are available. We don't really want them to go, especially Hufanga. But, these are guys who are available. Go, you Cincinnati, go get them. You New England, go get them prime time. You got to get in there and make this stuff happen. You got to become a contender.
Especially now that the salary cap's going up. When you look at the salary cap going up by $26.5 million, that's at least, depending on the position, that's at least 2 more quality players. And that can make all the difference in the world. You're talking, or that, or in the case of like an edge rusher or something, that's like that could be like a superstar. That could be a Trey Hendrickson. I think he's making like 21.5 right now. If you're a team that has money, and right now, if we talk about going all in on one side of the ball, but if you're New England right now, I think with some of the defensive players that are available, you mentioned all the corners, Asante Samuel Jr. Didn't Asante Samuel Sr. play for the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
So you got a little bit of symmetry in history there. I'm sure he might want to come. But we got Ward. DJ Reed is like my guy. I love DJ Reed, and Sauce actually had a kind of a little bit of a slump this year. He had a couple foot injuries and stuff like that, but. DJ Reed was kind of holding that whole secondary together. But if I got money and, if I'm New England, I'm going to go get me a couple receivers. I'm going to build up on defense. I know we keep talking about the Patriots is because they have such an ungodly amount of money right now to spend that they could turn it around just like that because Buffalo's not going to keep being Buffalo. Miami's already fallen off. The Jets are not going to be anything anytime soon. They got an opportunity. And then Kansas City showed how vulnerable they were in the Super Bowl. So the AFC is kind of wide open. If Cincinnati and the Patriots and maybe the Steelers make a couple moves here and there, they could make a run at Kansas City, and one of those teams can end up in the Super Bowl, especially Cincinnati, like you said, Jay, with Joe Burrow.
No doubt.
Two other cornerbacks that you didn't mention, probably lower on the list, but Raza Ghul, holy shit, that's Batman.
Raza Ghul,
Raza Ghul Douglas.
The Dark Knight Rises.
Rasul
Douglas, right?
Rasul Murphy Jr. Raza Murphy Jr. So there's a lot of guys out there that can find new homes and thrive. So a lot of good names.
Carlton Davis will be available again too, because I don't think the Lions are going to bring him back.
Yes, you're right. He will be available. There's no doubt. I mean, there's a few more free agents available. If you guys had anybody else in mind that I haven't mentioned, we get a couple of. Ronnie Stanley is a big one. I think that Baltimore's going to do everything to try to keep him. But
that could be a difference maker.
That could be a difference maker for Kansas City. That if Baltimore is not going to retain him, Kansas City needs to throw the freaking back up the Brinks truck, whatever it is. Throw money at that guy. Give him money. I know that he's got some injury history or whatever it is, but. Man, is he worth it when he's on the field?
Cam Robinson's out there too. I think, he's kind of hit or miss at times, but I think in the right system with the right offensive line coach and the right scheme, I think he can get back to what he was a couple years ago. Like we said, Zach Martin's out there, Kevin Zeller. The Lions have some decisions to make because their offensive line is kind of aging a little bit. You got Penei Sewell making $28 million. The question becomes, how much money are we really going to spend on the offensive line? If you want to keep this thing going, the Lions are, for as good as they've been the last couple of years, they got a lot of decisions to make. And I think a lot of it starts on the offensive line. So look for the Lions to probably be pretty active in maybe not the top tier free agents for the offensive line. But I think, when you get to the middle tier guys like bringing Zeller back, I don't really think is an option. But they may be very active in the free agent market, or maybe even in the draft, kind of bringing in that next wave of offensive linemen just to kind of keep going. Because the only way Jahmyr Gibbs is going to fulfill your prophecy, Jay, is if that offensive line keeps doing what they're doing.
Yeah, it's got to stay as good as it was. Another guy, real quick, that I like that we didn't talk about, Justin Simmons. The guy's 31 years old, but the man can get an interception when he wants one. Yeah, only had 2 last year, but he's one of the leaders in interceptions, I think, that are active right now. He's an incredible safety. So a lot of experience. Yeah. And if you draft a safety, he can also mentor that guy. So
Yeah, you got to like that in the secondary, no doubt. And we're going to get into the draft, obviously, as we get closer to it, with the scouting combine coming up next week. And that's always so funny because you get your Jamarcus Russells, who throws the ball 75 yards from his knees, or Zach Wilson, who wows you by rolling out to his left and throwing it right for 55. Like, give me a break. The combine is crazy, but you know what? For some teams, they get something out of it, more probably with the questions. But the draft order, just the top 12, the Titans are first, guys, and I got to think they're going for a quarterback to restart. Will Levis is not their guy. We know that. It's not going to be Mason Rudolph. So Cam Ward is the number one guy out of Miami, I keep hearing. Should Tennessee go for that quarterback if they believe it? Is the primetime pointing to the Giants right now at number 3 going for Cam Ward. But does Tennessee do that, or do they go for like Travis Hunter, who may be the best player in the draft? Kenny, what do you think?
I mean, that's going to be that's the thing with the first pick, man. You can be embarrassed or you can nail it. I don't want to give the Bears too much crap, but they could have had Jaden Daniels and they took, Caleb. So that shit, no one's going to forget that after what happened last year. But for the Titans, for me, I think that there's plenty of quarterbacks out there that we could add in free agency. I like getting either Graham, Hunter, or what's his name? Who's the Abdul Carter? I want one of those top 3 guys there. To me, they're at a level that no other players are at. Those 3 are the best players in the draft, in my opinion. Everyone else is in a different league to me. So I want one of the guys. But when you need a quarterback, and you've needed a quarterback for a long time, I could see that happening, yeah.
Well, you see, David, that's the thing. The top 3 teams do need a quarterback. The Titans draft 1, the Browns draft 2, and the Giants draft 3. And you don't have 3 legit first-round draft starters. And some people question even if Shedeur Sanders belongs in the top 5, which is why he's been put, number 6 of the Raiders. So do the Browns draft a quarterback, or do they, again, maybe try to go with Sam Darnold or something like that. I don't know. What do you think they do?
You know, one guy we forgot to mention in all the quarterback talk was one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time is Mr. Kirk Cousins. I can see Kirk Cousins. I can see Kirk going back to going to Cleveland and reuniting with Kevin Stefanski. I can see that as a very, very, very big possibility. But I like what Kenny said about Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter should go number one. If you take Abdul Carter, you've set the tone for the rest of your deep. He is a game wrecker, and if you draft him number one, you can build lesser pieces around him, kind of like what the Lions were trying to do before Aiden got hurt. And I think for some ungodly reason, they're going to stick with the guy that puts mayonnaise in his coffee, in Will Levis. I think they're going to at least give it maybe enough, because this draft class really isn't that great. You know, Jalen Milroe, come on. What are we doing here? What are we, So
there's some guys there,
they'd be better off. They'd be better off probably trying to get somebody. Maybe Kirk Cousins ends up there. But if I'm Tennessee and I'm not 100% sold on any of these quarterbacks, Abdul Carter's going number one. That might save their GM's job.
And you know why it's a good idea? He's a generational player. He could be the next Myles Garrett, and you already have a good offensive line, so you could bring a Stafford, a Darnold, a Rodgers over there and protect him. And a guy like that who can throw the ball, if you protect him, you will have success. I like the players that they have on their team. I could live with that.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, Abdul Carter is being projected by Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com to go number one. He's saying that Cam Ward is going to go to the Browns at number 2, and that Travis Hunter would go to your Giants at number 3. Very interesting right there. Would you rather have Travis Hunter, or would you rather try to get a top quarterback?
I'd rather have Cam Ward. If I can't get a decent free agent quarterback, we just ran off all the names, but if I'm going to draft a quarterback, if I absolutely have to draft a quarterback, I'm taking Cam Ward. He's the best quarterback to me. He's the best quarterback in the draft. With Travis or Shedeur Sanders, I don't want the Deion baggage that's going to come with it. And I know that there's some mumblings that Deion is kind of lobbying for the Giants or the Raiders to take Shedeur. He's a good breakdown. When the offense breaks down, he's that kind. He's a good quarterback. But Cam Ward, to me, would fit Brian Day. He's a big quarterback, kind of like what he had with Josh Allen. He's a structured kind of quarterback, so he's not going to do a lot out on the perimeter and all that. He's going to stay within the framework of the offense and make it work from there. So if I had to pick a quarterback, I'm not sold on a lot of these guys. Cam Ward, to me, is the best quarterback in the draft.
Real quick, but I just want to say about Shedeur. Bring him to a team that's rebuilding, because what has he done before? Jackson State, he was rebuilding there. That's what they were doing.
Colorado too.
Same shit. So put him on a team like the Raiders. You're rebuilding. Give him Brock Bowers. Give him some weapons out there. Let him run around and do his thing.
And
Brock Bowers is a fucking beast. He's a beast.
And I like that if he does go to the Raiders, that Pete Carroll would be his head coach. That's a guy that
That's a great mentor. Great.
Without a doubt.
Super Bowl winning, experienced legend.
Players.
National championship winning. I mean, he's done it all, man. He's done it all. He's coached Heisman guys. He's coached national championships. He's got Super Bowl. I mean, Pete Carroll, quiet as kept. Pete Carroll might be one of the top coaches, in the league, even though he's been out for a year or two. He might already be a top 10, top 8 coach in the league just by coming back.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I totally agree. I want to close it out with this, guys, because we're at our hour mark over here, and I've had a lot of fun. Got to talk about the 49ers for a real quick second over here, and that would be about one Brock Purdy. And the question is it worth it to sign Brock Purdy, to give him that money, and now have to build around him, as opposed to what the 49ers had done the past few years, which is have Brock Purdy, and he was built into a system that was already a good system, and you know what? He played in it very, very well. The question is, can he bring the team to the next level if they don't have a healthy Debo, a healthy Christian McCaffrey, a healthy Brandon Ayuk, a healthy George Kittle? If you don't have all these guys, along with the Trent Williams, who is your anchor on the left tackle, Is Brock Purdy worth all that money? Kenny, I know you're chomping at the bit right now, bro. Let's hear it.
Hey,
what do you got to say?
Steve-O is here. Like 2 years ago, I told him it would be up to 65 million, and it very well may be.
Oh,
I'm
God.
hoping it's like 50 million. So
Maybe I can live with that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's even a lot. That's a lot.
It is a-
50 is probably livable, right?
Well, yeah, because in 2 years, $50 million is going to look like a bargain.
yeah, nothing.
But here's the thing. The 49ers need to make a decision. And this is the biggest problem I've had with them since freaking Steve Young left. They have these quarterbacks that aren't really great. So they just get by with a Jimmy G. They just get by, with Brock Purdy. It's like, okay, well, we can make some noise. And I razz Prophet about this all the time. I am sick of hearing how great Kyle Shanahan is, and he's done nothing. He's done nothing. So they need to. If you're gonna put that money into a quarterback, and there's not a lot of other guys you can really go get, you need to make sure that it's going to be a home run, because the NFC is tough, man. The NFC, and it's only getting tougher. So if I'm John Lynch, I'm looking at that too. Like, we can give Brock Purdy all this money, but are we as good as Philly? Are we as good as Detroit? Are we as good as Green Bay? Can we be as good as what Chicago could potentially be? You can sign Brock Purdy and still be like the 7th or 8th best team in the conference.
That's what I'm saying, man, and that's what I'm afraid of, because Christian McCaffrey obviously well past his best years. We're not going to see that Christian McCaffrey ever again. So you take out that aspect. What the 49ers really need to do, Kenny, and you know this, we need to start building from the inside out again. Get our offensive line back. Give Nick Bosa a partner on the defensive line over there, bookends, do whatever you got to do. But that's when we were at our best, and that's what I'm afraid of, that we're getting away from that and concentrating too much on the quarterback and on the offense.
Yeah, and another thing you don't have to tell a 49er fan about is that we do not value offensive linemen. Our own offensive lineman coach doesn't give a shit about offensive linemen. He said it himself, and we've been talking about it all week on other shows and stuff. He said, get players that touch the ball. I can get a guy in the 4th, 5th round of the draft and make him a lineman. It ain't working. And Brock Purdy was hurt 2 times. Had he not been hurt the 2 times because we couldn't protect him, perhaps we get a Super Bowl. We may have had a Super Bowl had you not had his arm ripped off by Philly. Things like that.
Man.
Wow.
Those who are not watching right now, Mr. Prime.
I'd like to close out the show with just a little. I will no longer tolerate the Eli Manning slander. I will no longer tolerate the Eli Manning slander. Right here, baby. Right here. Right there. How many of those is Brock Purdy? What's that?
Eli's not happy about the snub. He's not happy.
Oh, Eli. Oh no, he and I talked last week. We're going to Canton probably next week, and we're gonna build our own bus. It's gonna be me and him side by side. We already got the sculptor in the works, but this is what it's all about, baby. He beat Tom Brady twice. Eli for the Hall of Fame, and if you don't like it, then I'd hate to tell you where to go, but you can probably figure it out.
Yeah,
There's something to be said about the guy who beats the GOAT twice.
I guess. I'd say you give it to the defense a little bit more on that one, but that's all right. Hey,
but wait. But this one here has Eli Manning as MVP. I'm just putting that out. These have Eli Manning as MVP. I'm done.
That's good. That's good. They couldn't find anybody else to give it to. There's nobody on offense.
I don't know why they only gave it to 4 people. They could have given Eli. They could have given it to Vinatieri. They could have given it to other people. I don't know what's going on. I think they felt bad for Eric Allen. He had been waiting for 20 years.
Yeah, no new guys. Yeah. Look, here's the deal. Eli Manning, I do believe, is a Hall of Famer because of the Super Bowls, but by no means is he a first ballot Hall of Famer. I have no problem if he waits another 4 or 5 years to get in.
Oh wow, 4 or 5. Oh my God.
He's gonna have to wait.
Yeah, we'll talk off the air about that one.
Yeah.
Ultimate goal, win the Super Bowl, and he's done it twice, so it's something to think about. I like that.
Twice.
Eagle thinks going
back.
Oh,
and just for craps and giggles, I got actually three giant Super Bowl rings. I got to go get the 4th one today. So We're
we
doing
want to
this.
get technical about it. The 49ers got 5 rings, so we got more than your 4.
I know, but it's been 30 years. It's been 30 years.
That's a good thing about the Chiefs losing. They didn't get to pass. They're not on our level just yet. We can still make fun of
right.
That's it. Exactly. All right. Yeah, closing it out. Steve-O thinks that CMC maybe actually could be what we saw from the years past. But
Man, I hope so. After those injuries,
that'd be nice. But hey,
I don't know if he's the next Adrian Peterson. That's the only guy I've ever seen back for some awful shit like that.
That's what I'm talking about, Kenny. That's what I'm talking. AP, baby.
AP.
He went to 10 teams to end his career, man. He just couldn't get enough of it. He was like
AP
Terrell
and Frank Gore, 2 of my favorites. Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson.
Newest member of our crew, the Power 32, Mr. Primetime. David Dale is in the house, and he will be all year long. Kenny Culp, the smartass, not going anywhere. He's here with us, and I, the sports prophet, will try to tell you what will happen in the future. As I did predict the Eagles would go to the Super Bowl this year before the year started. Kenny, you can back me up on that. No problem. I know it, baby.
Yeah.
Great time. Kenny blasted out a little bit. I don't know what happened. Issues over there with Kenny.
Dude, I celebrated too hard. I set the Wi-Fi off.
Hey, a lot of fun, guys. Hey, look, whatever. We went over an hour and 11 minutes, so no problem. But we appreciate you all chiming in. Steve-O, McNiner, great stuff. We appreciate you all watching. Check out the podcast. We'll be back next week because we got Scouting Combine, more stuff to talk about. Power 32 coming for you. We're out of here for now. Peace, everybody.
Peace, baby.
Good day.